All right, hi psychology students. Putting together another video. Obviously wearing the same shirt. It is the same day. Spoiler alert, I didn't just decide to wear the same shirt days on days on days. We're recording them all at once. So this is the third section here on the stress and health unit. We'll be focusing on psychological factors in health here today. And the focus will be on how do biological and psychological factors affect health? What are the most common types of headaches? What factors contribute to heart disease? And how is cancer linked to stress? So it's something I know I alluded to, at least at that point, last point. That applies at least to I know one person in my life that dealt with stress from a particular source that led, I think, to that outcome, unfortunately. So, oh boy. So, biological factors such as family history of a disease, exposure to disease causing microorganisms, inoculations against certain diseases, accidents, injuries, and age play an important role in physical illness. So those are things to keep in mind here, at least with the biological and psychological factors, excuse me. But it also then can lead to questions like why do some people develop cancer or have heart attacks over others? And why do others seem immune to those kind of health problems? And why do some people seem to fall prey to just about everything that is going around, while others ride along or ride out the longest winters with hardly a sniffle? Biological factors play an important role in physical illness. For example, family history of a particular disease can certainly increase a person's susceptibility to that disease. Woof, that was tough. Other biological factors that are involved in the development of illness include exposure to disease causing microorganisms, inoculations against certain diseases, as I alluded to, accidents, injuries, and age. A family history of health problems such as heart disease and cancer may tempt some people to assume there's little they can do to influence their health. I know I've had those kind of experiences, at least with people in my family, that's kind of the outcome that they come up with. Well, it's like, well, this is in our family, so I'm not going to be able to do anything. It just is what it is. That'll be probably what happens. I'll be dealing with that in my time at some point. And I'm sure that might be something you've seen in your own family or people that, that go like, well, our family has this as a, kind of a common thing that it's just going to be the same thing for me. But one's family history or genetic inheritance merely suggests a potential for developing an illness. And health writer Jane Brody noted that a bad family medical history should not be considered a sign of doom and gloom. She noted that instead, it should be welcomed as an opportunity to keep the harmful genes from expressing themselves. So essentially, trying to do everything in your power to keep yourself healthy to prevent that particular outcome that seems to be common in your family from happening to you. And so if you have that ahead of time, then you try to do the things that are going to prevent that from happening, at least the things that you can control, the whole control what you can control side of things. While biological factors are important, many health problems are affected by psychological factors, such as one's attitudes and patterns of behavior. Psychological states of anxiety and depression can impair the functioning of the immune system and make people more vulnerable to physical health problems as well. So you see that play out. Along with getting into notion of health psychology, which is down here. And health psychology is concerned with the relationship between psychological factors and the prevention and treatment of physical illness. In recent years, health psychologists have been exploring the various ways in which states of mind influence physical well being. Because of the growing recognition of the link between psychological factors and health, there's an estimated 3,500 health psychologists that are now on the faculties of medical schools, which I'm guessing, even since these notes have been put together, has increased. Health psychologists have made important contributions to the understanding and treatment of many different kinds of medical problems, including headaches, heart disease, and cancer, which we'll dive into here in this section here. So again, this gets to be at least another avenue, at least, of psychology, another field that some of you may have put together a brochure back at the beginning of the semester about, but this is something that, again, has grown in greater importance over the years in a variety of different avenues. Headaches are among the more common stress-related health problems that are out there. People under stress will sometimes get a headache as a direct result of feeling tense and it is estimated that 20% of Americans experience intense stress-induced headaches. There are several types of headaches. The most frequent kind is the muscle tension headache. So when people are under stress, the muscles in their shoulders, neck, forehead, and scalp tend to tighten up, and prolonged stress can lead to prolonged muscle contraction, which causes muscle tension headaches. Such headaches are characterized by dull, steady pain on both sides of the head and by a feeling of tightness or pressure. The next most common kind of headache is the migraine headache. Now, that's something that especially my own mom has had for years. But talk about at least kind of some of the changes that she made. At least that has been, knock on wood, less frequent. So migraine headaches usually have a sudden onset and are identified by severe throbbing pain on one side of the head. Migraines affect about 1 in 10 or 10% of Americans, and they may last for hours or even days. And some people have warning uh, auras before attacks, and these warnings include visual distortions or the perception of unusual odors that aren't there. The migraines themselves may be accompanied by, wait for it, sensitivity to light, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, loss of balance, and changes in mood. And brain imaging suggests that when something triggers a migraine, neurons at the back of the brain fire in waves that ripple across the top of the head and then down to the brain stem, which has many pain centers. Triggers for migraines include barometric pressure changes, so that's kind of changes in the weather. I know people, even my mom, could say that. Oh, I feel, you can kind of, oh, I feel the weather's changing, and it's either getting more humid or I guess that would be kind of usually typically kind of the thing where it's like the humidity, that particular piece. You also have pollen and even some types of drugs that people take can have that kind of impact. Other triggers are things like aged cheese, of all things, and the hormonal changes connected with menstruation as well. Psychological factors also trigger or worsen migraines. For example, type A, as I have down here, behavior pattern apparently contributes to migraines. In one study, 53% of people who had migraine headaches showed the type A behavior pattern, compared with 23% of people who had muscle tension headaches. Regardless of the source of the headache, people can unwittingly propel themselves into a vicious cycle. Headache pain is a stressor that can lead to an increase in, rather than a relaxing of, muscle tension in the neck, shoulders, scalp, and face. So again, something that a good amount of people in the United States, and I'm going to say obviously plenty of people around the world face. And again, things that aren't just things, at least these migraines or these headaches, excuse me, aren't just ones that you can snap your fingers and they go away. Treatments include aspirin and many prescription drugs. I know, like, oh goodness, Excedrin, I think is the name of one. I know my mom took, I think that's what it's called. Some inhibit the production of the prostaglandins that help initiate transmission of pain messages to the brain. Newer prescription drugs can help prevent many migraines, and behavioral methods also can help. Progressive relaxation focuses on decreasing muscle tension and has been shown to be highly effective in relieving muscle tension headaches. You also have biofeedback training has helped many people with migraine headaches as well. However, these methods should only be attempted under the supervision of trained healthcare professionals. So again, I'm sure there's different centers that are out there I've seen or at least heard commercials more specifically on the radio that talk about helping people, again, deal with migraines. But again, it's the whole notion that people are doing so with the help of trained professionals. Heart disease is what we'll get into next here. Researchers are not certain how stress increases the risk of heart disease. Chronic stress can be a contributing factor by causing blood pressure and cholesterol to rise, and prolonged stress may also lower the immune system's response to harmful hormones. So there's things like that. Nearly half, as we have here on the screen, nearly half of the U.S. deaths in the U.S. each year are caused by heart disease, making it a major national health problem. There are many risk factors associated with heart disease. One's family history or genetics. People with a family history of heart disease are more likely than others to develop heart disease themselves. There's the physical conditions as well, obesity, which is on the rise in of itself in the United States and elsewhere. High serum cholesterol levels and hypertension all contribute to heart disease. About 1 in 5 Americans has hypertension or abnormally high blood pressure. And although there appears to be a genetic component to hypertension, many other factors are also involved. These factors include smoking, obesity, and excessive salt in one's diet. And blood pressure also rises when people become angry or on guard against treats or threats. Treats. Wow, threats. Patterns of consumption is another thing. So, heavy drinking, smoking, overeating, eating food in high cholesterol can also contribute to heart disease. Americans' typically stressful attitudes towards food and eating, unlike that of the French, as an example, contribute to the risk of heart disease. There's the type A behavior, where people who exhibit type A behavior are more likely to be the people with type B behavior to develop heart disease. So again, kind of on always being on the go, on pressure, on all the time leads to that kind of outcome. Anger and hostility is another thing. So a constant need to control anger and hostile impulses increases the risk of developing heart disease. And again, that kind of pressure adds up. Job strain, overtime, work, assembly line, labor, and exposure to conflicting demands on the job can all contribute to heart disease as well. Lack of exercise. So people who do not regularly exercise are more likely to suffer from coronary heart disease than those who exercise regularly. So again, there's not always going to be these foolproof ways to overcome these things, but again, there's a fair amount of things that are from this list that you can control to at least fight back against even any of the genetic family history set of things of an outcome here, at least for you. So again, is it foolproof and perfect? No, but it can go a long way potentially at least to prolong your life. So, various medical treatments such as surgery and medication are available for heart disease. However, people can also benefit from behavioral changes that reduce the risk. So, among those are quitting smoking. Um, so, there's that. The whole notion that the link between smoking and heart disease and lung cancer make quitting smoking the single best way to reduce stress or the risks of serious health problems. Controlling your weight, so maintaining a healthy weight appropriate to one's body proportions can help reduce the risk of heart disease. Reducing hypertension, so relaxation training, meditation, which we got into with chapter 5, exercise, weight control, and a reduction of the intake of salt help control blood pressure. There's also the lowering of the serum cholesterol levels. So behavioral methods for lowering cholesterol includes cutting down on foods in high cholesterol, and saturated fat, and obviously exercising regularly. Um, And then also trying to change the type A behavior patterns as best as possible to kind of try to be a bit more relaxed, which again, that sometimes comes with age. That you might be type A for a long time, especially early on in your life, but maybe by middle age, that starts to kind of go away and might be for a variety of reasons, one of which is to try to be able to stay healthy. Learning to slow down and relax can decrease the risk of heart attacks as well. Again, that's tough to do in this day and age in our world and what we live in, where it seems like everyone's always on the go constantly. But again, if you're able to find some resemblance of a balance in your life, where you're not always 100 miles an hour all the time, it has actual positive health consequences in the long run. That's especially true. Learning how to relax is especially true for somebody with a type A personality. Or even had previous health issues like heart attacks, that tends to be the wake up call for people that um, if you have a heart attack and you're thankful enough to be able to and lucky enough to be able to live through it, that forces plenty of people to kind of refocus their priorities and say, okay, here are probably the things that led up to it, the stress that I was facing, the constant always on the go thing led to that people kind of start to slow down or force themselves to, especially after that. So something like that doesn't happen again. Exercising regularly, again, is a pretty important thing. A moderate program of exercise can help protect people from heart disease in the long run. Again, that's something that you get into with your health class and obviously with gym as well. I think then, yep, the last thing, at least for this particular section, is talking about cancer. So again, cancer is a disease that involves a rapid and abnormal growth of malignant cells. Cancerous cells can take root anywhere, for example, in the blood, skin, digestive tract, lungs, or reproductive organs. If not controlled early, as some of you may have experienced in your own life in some way, shape, or form, cancer cells can spread and establish masses or tumors elsewhere in the body. People actually develop cancer cells frequently, but the immune system normally succeeds in destroying them. Individuals whose immune systems are weakened by physical or psychological factors appear to be more likely candidates than others for getting cancer. And again, that can be tied into just the simple fact of the amount of stress that one faces, that you lose a loved one, you lose a job, you're facing a lot of pressure at work, at home, wherever else. That can lead to a weakened immune system, which again can lead to that possibility of having cancer. Some of the risk factors here include people just simply may inherit a tendency to develop certain kinds of cancer. The genes involved may remove the normal controls on cell division, allowing cancer cells to multiply wildly. Certain kinds of behavior also increase the risk of cancer. These behaviors include smoking, sunbathing, especially ultraviolet light can cause skin cancer. So it's the whole notion of, go to your tanning salons, and that's a bit problematic. And eating animal fats as well. Substances in cigarette smoke may damage genes that would otherwise block the development of many types of cancers. I'm assuming, obviously, in this day and age, the latest trend with juuling and everything would probably fall into that category of things. At least that would potentially lead to cancer and the same kind of effects. So there's that as well. Psychological problems such as prolonged anxiety and depression may also heighten the risk. Research suggests that stress may be an additional risk factor for the development of cancer. Again, I know I at least just alluded to an example, at least in my life, that I think that definitely applies to at least one person that I know that had cancer and eventually passed away from it. That I think the stress that that person faced prior to getting cancer was then subsequently the reason why they got it and unfortunately succumbed to it. In one study, researchers separated mice into two groups to test this all out. One group regularly subjected to stressful conditions. So that's what one group was facing, while the other was not. The immune systems of the mice in the group that were exposed to stressful conditions showed a reduced ability to kill cancer cells compared to the mice that were not exposed to stressful conditions. Other experiments with animals have suggested that once cancer has taken root, stress can affect the course of its development. So there's that as well. There's the psychological aspects as well. People with cancer must cope with the biological aspects of the illness, ranging from possible weakness and pain to the side effects of their medication. They also face many psychological effects of cancer, such as anxiety about the medical treatment itself and about the possible approach of death. Additionally, severe depression and feelings of vulnerability often accompany the diagnosis of cancer as well. Unfortunately, many people who are diagnosed with cancer are also burdened by the necessity of dealing with the insensitivity of others. Some people may actually criticize the person with the illness for feeling sorry for himself or herself, or for giving up, air quotes, the fight against the disease. So again, there's something that kind of gets into that kind of discrimination that you don't necessarily think is out there. I know there's plenty of obviously campaigns to combat various forms of cancer, but again, I think that's something that is an underlying issue of people kind of getting shamed for how they experience cancer, and especially it usually comes from people that haven't experienced that at all, that think they know it all, and then have absolutely no clue in reality. So there's that as well. So again, it's kind of the thing that's like cyberbullying and the effect that it's something that we don't necessarily think of or see out front unless you're really experiencing it. But just because we don't experience these kind of things ourselves doesn't mean that that's not out there. And it's something that if unfortunately that happens to you or anybody that you know, you'll experience that probably firsthand. And again, unfortunately, it shows the true character of some folks in our world. So there's that as well. Painful side effects of sometimes accompany the treatment for certain types of cancer. So, for example, nausea frequently occurs during chemotherapy. People receiving chemotherapy are sometimes taught relaxation and guided imagery techniques, which have been shown to significantly reduce the nausea and vomiting associated with chemotherapy. Studies of children and adolescents with cancer have found that playing video games even also reduces the discomfort of chemotherapy. And by allowing the children to focus their attention on battling computer-generated enemies, such games help keep the children distracted from the discomfort caused by the treatment. And then another thing that, again, goes into this, and it might sound cliche, is a positive attitude. And again, that applies to a variety of different situations in life. That again, if you go in as a negative Nancy, it's going to be difficult to be able to overcome anything that you might face in any capacity, whether it's health related or not. And again, cancer requires medical treatment, and in some cases, there are too few available treatment options. However, the attitudes people have about their cancer do seem to make a difference. A 10-year follow-up of women with breast cancer found a significantly higher survival rate among women who met their diagnosis with a fighting spirit rather than with resignation. So again, you see that time and time again. I know there's plenty of stories that you see in things like Sports Center and elsewhere that get into that. But again, maybe sometimes it's not always the happy ending where they live, they're cancer free and they live happily ever after the rest of their life without any kind of remission or any kind of cancer obviously coming back. But you still generally see people that have that kind of fighting spirit mentality live longer than those that kind of just resign to the situation, give up. That again, if you think about it, if you give up right off the bat, you're giving up on potential treatments that are out there or treatments that have been tested and proven, that you're in essence kind of shooting yourself in the foot without giving yourself a chance to try things out that either have worked or worked for others, or what something that might be a trial that might be out there that can make a difference at least for your life as well. So there's that as well. So a desire to fight the illness is apparently a key component of successful treatment, as we got into. Social support also increases the survival rate of people who have cancer. Psychologists have found that the feelings of hopelessness that sometimes accompany the diagnosis of cancer may hinder recovery because the person cannot suppress or because they can suppress a person's immune system. In addition, hospitalization itself is stressful because it removes people from the familiar surroundings of home and the social support that they've grown accustomed to. And furthermore, being in the hospital and subject to hospital routines for any reason reduces one's sense of control. In some cases, there may be a great deal that a person with cancer can do to affect the eventual outcome of the disease. However, there are numerous ways to reduce the risks of developing cancer in the first place. The most effective way is to avoid behavioral risk factors for cancer by reducing the intake of fats and increasing the intake of fruits and vegetables. Limiting the amount of stress one is exposed to, again, easier said than done on that front, and having regular medical checkups are also vital factors in the reduction of the risk of developing cancer as well. So again, taking those opportunities on that front go a long way as well. But again, I know that I'm sure pretty much almost anybody in this class has experienced or knows someone that has experienced cancer themselves or somebody else in their life. That again, it cannot be understated the importance of checking in on the person that's going through it as much as you can. And again, it might seem as at times overbearing, or that maybe that they don't want that support. But again, it's important to know to kind of pick or choose to stay in touch. And again, to do that throughout the journey, and even if they become cancer free, to still support them afterwards. Because again, what I typically see in a situation like that with cancer or anything else, if somebody going through a difficult time of losing a significant other, a family member, is that people are around in the moment, but then they don't check up down the line. That's like, all right, you get all the support for whatever period of time you're experiencing that difficulty, or in that moment, but then once that moment is gone, usually you see that kind of support disappear just as quickly then. So it's still just as important to check on people even after the fact, that even if they become cancer free, to still check in on them, to know you still have that support and that you still care. And again, within the treatment, at least process for cancer, that goes a very long way. So again, might be preaching to the choir, but something that is very true. So that's it for this particular section. We got one more to go, which gets into the ways of coping with stress, which I know we kind of got into with the meditation and getting into just chapter 5 on consciousness. But we'll dive into that. That'll be the last section here. And then that'll get into the cover. So peace out.